Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this edition of the Big East Rewind. I'm Chuck Everson, your host, and my co-host is a guy that lights up a room when he walks into it. Some people say it's because of his name. Some people say it's his charming smile and personality, and all of that might be true, but I say it's all of that bright orange Syracuse gear that he's constantly wearing. It's Sonny Spera. Here he is, the bright and shiny Sonny Spera. Good afternoon, Sonny. How are you?
Hey, Chuck. How you doing?
All right. Well, you know what? We got a really fun show today. You know, we've had a lot of feedback on the show that we did with Gene Mangi and Froggy Paparo, and
yeah, it was fun.
Everybody enjoyed the stories and listening to the officials' point of view. So we got a couple of the greatest officials ever to be in the Big East ever. And it's funny because as I've talked to these guys as we're prepping this up, these guys, the officials, were just as popular as the guys playing or coaching. I mean, it's I don't know of any other conference, and maybe I'm wrong, and I'll ask them when we get them on, but maybe I'm wrong, but like it's got to be tough when somebody's, yelling at you as an official. It's a thankless job. You know that. I said, but people are yelling at you by your first name or your last name rather than, hey, ref. It gets a little personal, so we'll have to ask them about that. But these guys have worked numerous Final Fours, numerous big games, been doing it forever. First, we have Eddie Corbett with us today and Timmy Higgins, two of the best ever to do it in the Big East. How are you guys?
We're doing great, Chuck. Thank you.
Not a complaint in the world.
Oh, that's awesome. I don't think people would listen to you, Tim, if you did complain. That's the problem with that,
Including my wife.
So, listen, guys, we appreciate you coming out. And Sonny and I have been doing this for a little while now, and we've had some of your compadres on. Froggy, as I mentioned in the opening, Froggy Paparo was on with us. We had some fun with him and Gene Mangi, and we appreciate you guys taking the time to talk about your time in the Big East Conference and on the court with some of these great players and teams that you officiated.
Thank you.
So tell us. Let's get started right from the beginning, guys. How did you get involved with officiating, and how did you get your start? Timmy, you first. How did you get started in wanting to be an official and then getting involved with officiating?
Well, what happened was I went to college late, and I ended up being in the Army for a while, came out, went back to school, and I was looking for work. So I was bartending, caddying, and somebody said, why don't you look at refereeing? And I did. I started refereeing. I got the bug. I started doing kids' games, high school games, small college games, and was lucky enough to hit it at the right time. So
when you start, and I go, how do you, and I've done it. I mean, I was a high school official for a little while, and it's not an easy job, as we can all agree. It's given me a very different perspective of what you guys do, having now done it on a high school level. But talk about how do you go from little kids games to the Final Four? I mean, how does the progression work?
Not quickly.
I bet.
Obviously, you went from the CYO, to the JV games, to the varsity games, to the small college games, and then luckily you get picked up. It's like anything else. As you progress, you either fall out or you progress.
Right.
And luckily we were able to progress.
How about you, Ed? How did you start?
Yeah, basically the same thing. You start. It was, for me, it was, I just gotten married, and we started a family, and was just kind of to make, pay a bill here, pay a bill there, take the little guys out for pizza and beer on a Friday night, and as Timmy reflected, it's all a progression. You start out with CYO and you work your way up into the freshman, JV, and varsity high schools, and then you get a little bit of a bug, and somebody comes along and says, hey, you should take a shot at the colleges, and you work your way up to in the New York area, it's the CUNY system, and then you try to work your way up into the Division II. And I, like Timmy said, he was lucky enough to get a break. I was lucky enough to get a break, and you take a hold of that break, and you take it as far as you can take it. And both of us been fortunate enough to take it to to a very nice level. And, you know, I mean, it's hard work. I tell young officials, I said, you know, going to the next level of officiating Division I said, it's just seeing plays over and over and over. I said, you know, it's what the golfer, I'm just using golf as an example. You know, they'll go out and hit 100-yard shots until they really get proficient at it. It's the same thing with us. It's that we just see plays and plays and plays, and where it becomes second nature.
Right. What was the time frame about? When did you guys start? Because the two of you had such tremendous longevity in careers at the high level. What was the era and the time frame when you started?
For me, it was go ahead.
Mine was in the mid 70s, and I kind of finally got my break probably 84, 85 with the Ivies in the Northeast Conference, and then, you know, kind of worked itself up into you know, into the Big East and the ACC, as well as Timmy.
Well, I started in my mid-20s, and then I started probably doing Division I probably in the mid-70s, and I was very lucky to progress. I will say this, though, there's one thing I disagree with. I think working high school basketball is far harder to work, Chuck, than the level we worked at.
Right.
For a lot of reasons, not the least of which is we don't have to deal with parents. And we get security every place we go.
Right.
That's true. And in high school, they're right on top of you. So you're right.
Well, I just think high school basketball is very hard, and I can understand how they don't get officials.
Right.
You know, one of the things we never had to worry about was security.
Right.
Right.
Unless you're with Burr and Higgins.
Yeah, there you go.
That's true.
Maybe after.
Yeah, and also in high school, Tim, you don't have just basketball players. You got kids that play football, that want to play basketball, that the level of play is not, and as the level of play gets better and better, the game, you know, gets easier. It's just the speed of the game at that point, right?
Right. It flows. There's no question.
Yeah.
And that's our job, to make sure the game does flow.
You know, it's funny because one of the
glad you said that. I have a question about flow. Go ahead, Chuck.
One of the officials that I worked with does college games. His name's Kevin Harrington, and Kevin would tell me, you know, as you're reffing the better teams, the next game you have, like we reffed it. I reffed a game where it was kids that were high end college kids, you know, but they were in high school, but it was one of those schools that it was like a prep school. So the next game was like reffing in slow motion. You could see everything. The game was so fast the first time, and then the next time it was, you know, it just slowed everything down.
It's interesting you should say that, because I think the one thing that you find out is when you finally do make it at the highest level is when the game finally slows down.
Yeah.
Right.
And in your mind, the game is slowed down. Some people that never happens to.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, it's just too fast. But I think any official who has any kind of credibility mentally is able to slow the game down and compartmentalize the thing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Good point, Tim. And I say that to young officials, is that, you know, the Division II games are fast. The Division I games are in super speed. So, you know, I tell these guys, you know, everybody wants to go do the Big East final at Madison Square Garden, but I tell them, you know, you got a lot of work to do before you get there.
Let me ask you a question about this, because I thought that's a huge point. I don't think people, and I know fans don't appreciate or understand what flow means.
Right.
When you guys started, Eddie, I'm going to ask you this question. At what point did you really start to say flow is a significant factor in the way I administer the game?
I'm going to be very truthful. It was watching the guys like Timmy and Burr. You know, I don't want to say we don't want to have game interrupters, but you don't want to have game interrupters. You know, if you can get into a flow and, you know, you see a foul that was obviously a foul and you can let it go, or to keep that flow going, that's what we did. I mean, and that's what I learned from Timmy and Burr and you know, Manji and Paparo and all those guys. It's, you know, I don't think you can do that. You can't do that today. today is we're in a different world officiating today. But when I first started, when Timmy was doing it full blast, I mean, that was the omnipresent of us, was to make sure that there was no game interrupters if you didn't have to interrupt the game.
How about you, Tim?
Well, we always felt that a whistle interrupted the game. Now, that doesn't seem you don't need whistles, but I always felt, I think the people who broke me and felt that the least whistles possible, the better the game. Nobody comes to see a referee, as the old adage goes, but the less you blow the whistle and still keep control of the game, the better the game will be. And that's what separates the fun from the fact.
Now, let me ask you this. Now, on the opposite side of this, will coaches manipulate that to say, listen, I can take it to this point, but with Tim Higgins, I can't go past this point. Like, my guys can foul some, but they can't go here. I mean, I'm assuming that the great coaches really can understand that. But was that something that you perceive?
No, I think the coaches understood that. Also, I think the coaches embraced it at that time because they could keep their best players on the floor, and the great players weren't hurt by what we call interrupting plays. You know, if a guy's going to the basket and he gets held a little, and he takes 2 more dribbles and scores, let's go up the court and keep playing. Why would you put a foul in that play?
Right.
Now it's all changed, but that's the way we referee.
Right. That's a very good point.
So you guys both mentioned, the changing of the game. How has the game changed since both you started in the 70s as far as officiating a game back then to now? Like, one of the things I noticed is if you miss a call and in your own head you missed the call, but it's too late, you already blew the whistle. You gotta fake it kind of till you make it, right? I mean, now they go right to the video and you're on full display. So what does that do to the psyche of an official when they come out to referee a game, knowing that, Big Brother's watching, so to speak?
Well, I would say 2 things. First of all, in our game, if you blow a call, you better be honest, because you have no credibility.
Right.
If you blew a call and you don't have the nerve to say, I blew the call, we got to get past it.
Yeah.
That would be my first thing. The second thing is, as an official, I would love replay. Because I'm not going to make a lot of mistakes, neither is Eddie. And if I can go to, or Eddie can go to a replay, we're going to make the game that much better if we could do it in a very fluid way.
Well, you guys were both very accurate, unless, of course, somebody was sitting up in the blue section at the Garden. Then they had a better view than you guys did on the floor, right?
They were all on guys.
But
holy cow!
And the point of Timmy is that all of the older guys, and I'm saying that respectfully, Boeheim and Louie and Large Father and Wally and all of those guys, they understood what we did. They absolutely understood. They knew we were going to make mistakes. And you know what? Before the replay, we didn't make a lot of mistakes. I mean, a lot of people thought we did, but we didn't. I mean, we were probably in the 95 percentile of calls. When we blew the whistle, we were probably right 90% times. And there were times when, at the end of game situations with the clock and all that kind of stuff, with the tenth of a second, we're going to miss plays and all that kind of stuff. But, basically, I mean, today, geez, I mean, they spend so much time at the monitor. It's just, I don't know. It's not what
about flow, right, Ed? I mean,
yeah, exactly. No question about it.
That's a way to squash flow immediately.
Yeah,
right.
Ed's time
No
out.
question.
Yeah,
it's awful. I think it's awful, but that's the way me and Timmy were growing. Now my son's doing it. He's doing pretty good now. That and that's all they want to do is go to the monitor.
How cool was that you got to referee with your son, Ed?
Yeah, that was kind of cool. Yeah, Jimmy O'Connell came and did the game. From AP, the guy Jimmy Ock, and it was really a special night.
Yeah, that's great.
What
about I'm sorry, Timmy, go ahead.
Just to go along with what Eddie said, one thing about all those coaches, they were never, what's the right word? They never expected you to get every play right. What they did expect that they would have as much chance for win as the other team.
Right.
And if you got to blow calls, probably we blew 2 each way. And at the end of the night, if they both had a chance to win and you didn't screw it up badly, they were okay with that. They wouldn't have said that, but you'd see them next week and you'd do it all over again.
Right.
Well, I think, when TV, like that was the one thing with the Big East is the advent really of TV every game and ESPN and national, and it wasn't just one game a week. And I think the coaches played up to that too. I mean, we had rock star coaches across the board.
No question.
Think about this. They all became multimillionaires because of Dave Gavin.
Right.
Think about it.
Yeah.
They were very good coaches. They made a very good living. Dave came in, gave ESPN a game a night or 2 games a night, and as you said, made them rock stars.
Yeah.
We all owe Dave Gavin. That's for damn sure.
But now, like you said, the part you said, they'll never admit it. Of course they won't. They have a fan base. They have people that they have to, right?
Sure.
They have to, listen, I'm fighting for my guys, so
of course.
The whole showmanship issue,
Yeah.
No question.
It was definitely a showman, that's for sure,
Right, exactly. Right. They were all showmen, and sometimes we were showmen too.
Well, it's funny. Gene Mangi, I think, was the one that said it. We knew who was important because when anything happened, the cameras in the Big East always went to the coaches. Always went to
there you go. Well, that's what Dave was selling.
Right.
And he sold it well.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, you think of all those guys. They went from Ford Falcons to Lemos.
Not only that, I mean, the personalities, when we had the 16 teams, we had the personalities. It was like at the end of the season, now, because of the number of the staff back then, we would work 50 games, 50 Big East games. Talk about getting a tooth pulled without Novocaine. That is exactly what it was every night. We used to love to go to the ACC, and I'm not disparaging them or the Big Ten. It was like having a night off because it was nothing compared to the Big East. Nothing.
Let's talk about that. We have had that conversation with a lot of players, and our feeling was the Big East was a very physical, very hard, hard-nosed, tough conference, and that's how the game was played, and that's how it was let to happen. And it's interesting to hear your perspective when you did those other conferences. Was that ever a discussion with not just the officials, but the coaches or the powers that be in those conferences?
They probably didn't know. They didn't realize how we were thinking, and it's you had to go down and referee. There's no question about it. But it was paled in comparison to the one night it was Pitino and Higgins, the next night it was Calhoun and Boeheim, and then it was like, are you kidding me? And then thank God, and I say this with all respect, is that the staff that Art Highland put together was, you didn't have, if you had guys that were afraid, they didn't make it very long in the Big East.
Yeah.
You agree, Timmy?
Absolutely. Well, you know what happened? It came to a point where the coaches and the officials and the administrators all decided, hey, we're going to administrate, you're going to coach, and they're going to referee because there ain't anybody else we can get.
Right.
So we all better get along. And we eventually were able to all get along because we all knew we were going to see one another again next week.
Right.
How did that affect your game prep, guys? Like you walk into the arena, whether it's in Philly or the Dome or wherever, and you got 2 teams and you know who the coaches are, you know what's going on. There's physicality that's going to happen. There's going to be touchy fouls and that kind of stuff. How did that affect your prep when you had your little meeting and stuff prior to going out on the floor? Or did it?
Well, I don't think it did because we were very comfortable in that situation.
Right.
That's what we did every night. Would you agree with that, Eddie?
Yeah, I think we always played the cards that we were dealt. I mean, sometimes the first minute of the game, you know that it was going to be 2.5 hours, 6 beers right after the game, because it was going to be just a brutal game. Yeah. And look, everybody knows that a lot of the coaches didn't really particularly care for each other. So that played into how we prepared for the game. We knew the personalities and they knew us.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was, you had to go in, and you could tell the first minute of the game. If you couldn't tell the first minute of a game how the game was going to be played, you didn't really belong in officiating at that level.
Great point.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, especially when you got, Georgetown and
sure.
As soon as you guys throw the ball up, they foul the first guy they see.
Oh, come on, please. Enough.
You got the Syracuse Orangemen.
Tim.
We got Georgetown guys on here, Tim. Let me tell you what.
That's right. He left the building. He left the building. Now let's talk about him. I wasn't
even saying anything about the officials.
All right.
I was talking about the Georgetown. Oh, there you go. All right.
My daughter went to Georgetown. Easy.
I'm sorry to hear that, Tim.
Well, I will tell you a funny story. We talk about game flow. Many of the times that the game flow was the first minute was a technical foul or two.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just to get everybody comfortable.
Exactly. This is how it's going to be tonight, boys.
Yeah, exactly. You just said, like, in the first 2 minutes, I don't think so, boys. And then everybody adjusted. So hopefully.
So
yeah, right.
So I want to ask you
some
about
of the coaches that you some of the stories from some of the coaches during games, and who was a chatty guy who kind of backed off, who knew. We had Froggy on, and Froggy said you had to call a travel if you were doing a Massimino game, because once you called the travel, he calmed down and that was it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And there were coaches that if you called a travel and it was a 50-50 travel or it wasn't a travel, that really got them, exercised. And to your point with the Georgetown, when Large Father was doing it, he had 10 guys on him, so you had to call. And he, in his mind, I think, I don't know this to be true, in his mind, he thought we're going to foul until they stop calling fouls. Eventually, they're going to stop calling fouls, and sometimes he was right. We stopped calling fouls.
He wasn't the only one. If that's the case,
sure.
Who felt that way.
Sure,
there were coaches who felt like that they could foul 100 times, and if you only called 50, they were 50 ahead.
Right.
But
good point.
Listen, I can't get in their minds.
Right.
So let me ask.
The bars.
Let me ask you about some of your experiences now. I know both of you have vast experiences in the Final Four and the championship game. So, but before that, let's talk about some of the Big East matchups, because I know for us at Syracuse, our arch enemy was Georgetown.
Right.
And I know that Big John and Coach B, they had plenty of spats and plenty of interesting things happened in the Syracuse-Georgetown game. Do you guys have any memories of any things that you can think of involving either of those two programs?
Well, let Timmy go first, because he's had more. He had, I had at the end of his career, and Timmy had. So Timmy should go first on this one.
I was there the night that John was going home, and rightfully so. When Boeheim took the mic, you remember that?
That was when the orange hit the backboard, right?
That's correct.
Never forget it. That
and
was
I'll
a
tell you what.
moment.
I'll tell you when I learned what a lead official was. Hank Nichols was the lead official that night, thank God, because I couldn't have done it. Somehow he got Boeheim to go to the mic, and he got Thompson to stay. And that was the first time I really knew what a lead official was. And there was a reason that Nichols was there.
That's a good point, Timmy. Very good point. Yeah.
He took control of that whole situation, right, Tim?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
And that's not something that normally happens. I mean, he was
no, but that's what my point is. He comes out of left field, and Nichols was such a great referee. He was able to make it all. However, he's a PhD, so he's smarter than I am. He got it all figured out in his mind, and then went over and figured it out, and somehow got the two of them to fall in love, and we got through the game.
I mean, he's standing at the foul line in the middle of his shot.
Yeah, I was
splatters on the
I was
backboard.
there.
I know.
I was afraid I was going to get hit.
Yeah, that was the weirdest thing too. I mean, I was sitting there too. I was like, "What just happened?" Nobody really realized what happened until after it was, because I think Patrick pointed, was like something happened.
Sure,
and we're like,
sure.
"What was it?" Yeah, that was a strange one.
Early in the Big East, before Timmy was doing a lot before I was. You watch those games on TV. If you had, 3 altercations, you had a good night. I'm serious. I mean, those games at the beginning of the Big East Conference were
brutal.
Brutal. That's probably the best word. And then they put the fight rule in, and that kind of quelled everything. But wild.
Timmy, did you ever have any of the games that we had with them in the Garden where Patrick and Pearl and Patrick and Michael?
I was there.
Which one did you
have? The fight?
Yeah.
With Pearl and Patrick?
I had the game. That was comfortable. What do you do now, right? You're going to throw the 2 best players out? What do you do now? We were in the game, 5 minutes? The whole garden would have, I don't know, they would have had enough security.
I tell you what, if Patrick would have connected, it would have been all over for Pearl.
Well, if Patrick connected, it would have been to me, because I was in front of him trying to stop him. That's how dumb I was. That'll never happen again. Yeah, I was there that night. I grabbed Patrick. He moved me like I was a little stick. I said, well, I think I'll move out of this and let the boys handle it themselves.
Yeah. Let them figure it out, right?
But that was part of the sale of the Big East.
Sure.
That was part of the shtick. Right, wrong, or indifferent.
No, it was. And to Timmy's point, the New York City, when they had in the inception of the Big East, was when they went to New York City, there was nothing. I don't care what, unless you had the Beatles 7 nights in a row in Madison Square Garden, there was nothing like the Big East tournament. Nothing.
Yeah,
Other than the World, even in the World Series, when you're only going to have either at Shea or Yankee Stadium, you're only going to have 2 nights, and then they're going to move the tournament. The series. New York City was electric, especially when you had the 16 teams. There was nothing like it. I'm telling you, even the Final Fours that we did, and Timmy will agree with me, there was nothing like working Saturday night, the Big East final. Nothing in the world.
When they said, welcome to a sold-out Madison Square Garden, and they put those lights down, you knew you were in the big time.
Right. there was a game, and I'll just give you one example.
Please.
There was a game, it was myself, Burr, and Mike Stevens. We did the 9:30 game, which probably started at 9:45. We got cracked open our first beer, probably 12:30, 1:45, and we had the privilege of working at noon, the Connecticut Syracuse game. At 11:40, they had 21,000 people in Madison Square Garden. That's the insanity of that tournament. So
that was once again the brilliance of Dave Gavitt.
Right.
The brilliance of that man. 25 years he took the Garden. And people thought he was crazy. He was crazy, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's some of the stuff behind the scenes, Tim, that we've talked about on other episodes of the show, where the fact that if 2 coaches had a disagreement in one of the meetings and now they're going out to play golf, he made sure he put those 2 guys in the same golf cart,
Sure. No question.
Or having the Big East luncheons the day before the tournament started at the Garden. You have 2 guys from each team at a table, and you're sitting with the guys that you're about to beat each other up. So it was.
That was a genius.
It was genius because we, those relationships we still have, Tim. That's why we're doing with this, because we've met all these guys as we're playing, and they've, even though the only thing that was different was the color of the jersey, but everybody else went through everything that Sonny and I went
without question.
It's been
and I'll tell you what,
cool,
the Big East was good to us too.
Sure was.
They treated us very well. At some point the decision was made, I said earlier, the administrators would administrate, the coaches would coach, and the officials would officiate. And once that came about, they couldn't have been nicer to us or more supportive or financially also. They treated us very well, and it was a great experience. And that had a lot to do with Dave and I.
Now,
One of the things,
go ahead,
one
Sonny.
of the things PJ talked about was
You
he
can't
said-
believe anything PJ says.
well, that's why I put it out there first. That's my source. But PJ said when he and Gary Williams started in the conference, what he noticed was, and it was Dave Gavitt's, kind of thought was, listen, we're going to iron it out, but we're going to hash it out in private. You guys can just dog fight. You do it here, and then we clear the air. And he said he and Williams sat back and watched it. And then, of course, I'm sure they got into it later, but that was just par for the course. That's what they did.
Sure.
Well, let me be clear about this. There were many of us that were involved in those private conversations. And Dave never did anything public, but Dave and Art were very clear in private conversations, no matter who you were, the way it was going to be.
Right.
And everybody listened.
Yeah, protect the
Including
shield.
the officials, including the coaches. Everybody understood who was running the program.
Right.
Right.
That was before they talked about brands, and we had a brand now. We had a big brand.
That is
Sure.
absolutely correct.
Yeah.
It was a brand.
Yep.
It was
And
a
he
brand that
created
was
it.
being marketed.
Yeah.
You're absolutely correct.
Yep. And it catered to, right, the people, the fans, and the level.
Sure.
And,
Right cities,
Sure.
right places,
and
right
had
fan
teams,
base.
had teams in the
Which is something
Final
I don't
Four
think
winning.
They'll never be matched again.
I mean,
No.
4 or 5 years, he has teams winning national championships. Nobody
Yeah.
does.
Yeah.
Right. And Timmy's right. The 16 teams will never be matched again. I don't care what conference they do, multi-conference, 20-team conference. They will never duplicate what we went through for 10 or 15 years with those teams. Never. I don't care what anybody tells me.
I agree.
One of
You
the things you have to have, I'm sorry, Sonny. One of the
No,
things
go.
you have to have to be an official or a baseball umpire, anybody that's calling a game, is thick skin. Okay, we all know that.
Sure.
I mean, I'm sure both of you guys have heard it all and then some.
Right.
Has the advent of social media made that even a little bit more difficult to take? Do you guys see any of the stuff that people but now they're not just yelling at you in the stands now they're on social media and shouting out because everybody is anonymous. They can say what they want, right?
And the game's never over now.
Right. I
The
tell
check gets cashed, though.
Yeah, I tell my sons, and I reference my sons' groups who are, their social media, they're in their, late 30s, early 40s. I tell them, look, I said, when you're going to start, I said, do two things. Don't read the paper the next morning that the town that you just left in, and stay off Twitter and all the Facebook stuff because it's not good. They're not going to say, hey, you guys did a great job. So don't buy into that stuff. So, I mean, that's what you signed up for. You put a striped shirt on. That's what it's a big target on your back. So if you don't have the thick skin, take it off.
What do you say, Tim?
Well, much like Eddie, I agree with that. The other caveat I would say is, in all the years I refereed, ESPN never started a sports center by saying what a great job Tim Higgins and his crew did in Villanova last night.
Right.
So if you're going to read the papers and you're going to get involved in social media, you're probably in the wrong business.
Right.
No question about it. There's no question about it.
Even as an athlete, I think it would be harder to play now because, listen, I've been on the end of all kinds of stuff. I got booed off the floor. I got cheered, just like we all have.
Yeah, of course.
But now, I mean, the mental part of it and just from the social media getting berated by, however many followers these guys have is got to be tough. I think, if as a student athlete or anything else. That's why I asked. I just, I think
it's wrong they do it to the kids, but that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
But the other part is, if I had a son, I'd tell him don't read it.
Yeah, right.
That's
Exactly.
your decision, not theirs. They can write anything they write, whether you agree or whether you come back at them. That's your problem because you ain't gonna win.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't win.
Well,
They get
can't
more
win.
followers than us.
Well, I mean, right. This all started with like sports talk shows, right? With
Sure.
the call
Without
in,
question.
Right. And then now it's taken to, okay, well, we have talk shows, but you know what? I can do this at 3 a.m. in the morning. I can blast off on so-and-so.
Absolutely. And a lot of people making a living who couldn't have made a living at it 25, 30 years ago. That's for sure.
Right.
Correct. Right.
Now let me ask you a question. You refed in some, like, Madison Square Garden, no question. I think the Carrier Dome, I think the Palestra is a special place.
Sure.
I think some other places had some real nice, Boston College on campus, Pittsburgh's on campus facility. They had some real challenges in those places. Seton Hall, before they moved to the Meadowlands, they used to play in Walsh Gym. Yep. I mean, I played there my freshman year. Thank God we didn't go back, but I played there my freshman year. Refereeing in some of those environments, do you have, I mean, did it affect you? And then talk about, were there any moments that you remember, hey, I remember in Walsh Gym and I ran out of bounds, whatever. I mean, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, the Palestra was really, I mean, they were literally, I mean, 2 feet from you. I mean, you had to move people back on sidelines so you could have the kid throw the ball in bounds. But interestingly enough, a lot of those places, we became friendly with a lot of the people that were down on the floor. Hey, Eddie, how you doing? Hey, Timmy, how are you? Where are you going tomorrow night? Blah, blah, blah. Hey, I saw you last night. So, you become, if you have half a brain, you kind of get pat those guys on the back and say, hey, Tommy, how you doing? How's your family? Yeah, because you can only win when you do that. If you become kind of arrogant, it's I'm on the game tonight. It doesn't bode well at the end of the night.
You're absolutely right. But to your point, I think the first time you went to a place like Kansas, or the first time you went to Arkansas, or some of those really great arenas, it was certainly thrilling. But you know what? Once you get in the building, it's the same, same court every night. And
right,
you better get the next play right. That's all.
Right. Yeah.
And correct. Move on.
How about the flavor of the fans? Was any areas that you noticed that was, oh boy, we're going to Syracuse tonight? Or, I mean, any of those places different?
No.
They're all assholes. I mean,
they all went to the same.
I was waiting for it.
Yeah.
They all went to the same school of obnoxious.
Right.
The only thing at Syracuse is you had to get the hell out before that whole crowd got out, right? You could spend the night on that hill.
Yeah. I'll tell you, the best way to end the Syracuse game was the last shot would go in, because if you got out fast enough, you could get down the hill and get on 81 within probably 20 minutes. If the game was 25 points, you just spent an hour in the locker room because you weren't going anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's so hard to get in and out of this.
It's unbelievable.
That'll give you some idea of what we thought about.
and if the 25-point game, Boeheim would give you a little shot going off the court. Have fun getting down the hill.
Right. Yeah. That's funny. So what are some of the, like, when you have a call and something, well, let's talk about this before I even get to that. Talk about the famous blarge, where you have a block or a charge call.
Sure.
So how, as an official, how do you guys deal with that? If something happens and you got a double whistle and you got the famous blarge, how does, first of all, explain that to everybody, and then talk about how you get through that as you and your partner.
Well, I will tell you this.
Go ahead.
If you have a blarge, you better turn your phone off.
Yeah.
Because Art Highland is going to be in your face in about 30 seconds.
Yep.
And he is not going to be happy. But what happens is, obviously, the leader, trailer, leader, center official disagree, and the way it's supposed to work, the person who the play is going to takes the play and the other guy gets off. But bad things happen, as we all know.
Right.
And when you get that, you just want to find a hole and crawl in it. Because nobody's buying that. Now you're putting fouls on two guys. At least if you put one foul, somebody will be happy. Yeah. This was nobody's happy.
Right.
So you just put a towel over your head and tell them it was Burr who did it.
I mean, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen a lot, but it happens. we work in a game of angles. So, Timmy's angle might be different than mine, and I might be different than Burr's, or whatever.
Yeah.
But I would say it happens maybe to us once a year, once a season, maybe.
The farther we went in refereeing, one of the things that you learned was the later you blow your whistle, the better.
Sure.
So if you see the whole play and you wait and wait, somebody will blow before you do, and you let them have the play, whether it's right or wrong. But early whistles get you in trouble. When a kid goes up and he gets a little bump, and then the shot gets blocked and you've already got a foul, you want to take the whistle and stick it in your ear. The older you get, the less the later you blow the whistle.
Right.
So when you have it, not necessarily a blarge, but when you have a call that's made, obviously one bench is upset, the other bench is not upset. Okay.
Right.
Or were there certain coaches that you can have a conversation with and explain to them, and or was there just guys that were just completely out of control and you're not able to communicate?
Well, that's a good question. The answer is simple. It was like life. There were people you could talk to, there were people you couldn't to. But I will tell you this, the farther I went in officiating, there was probably three things you said to a coach. The first was I had it right. Secondly, I wouldn't mind having taken a look at it. Or third, I had got it wrong. And maybe a fourth one. If you're not happy, call out in the morning. We got to get through tonight.
Right.
And those were the answers. Anything other than that didn't matter.
Right. Right. And to your point, Chuck, I mean, there were coaches that you could say, hey, that call, like Timmy just said, that call was absolutely right. And he's not buying, and you just walk away from him. Or you say to him, it was a bad call. I mean, I didn't mean it, and I hope I don't make another one, and walk away from him. I think 90% of the coaches would buy it.
How about some of the sideline theatrics?
That's great.
Oh, it was fun.
That was great.
I just picture Rolly, pulling his hair, screaming, and Coach B and his look and his,
right? He hasn't changed in 40 years, so I wasn't going to change him.
Right.
No, he's not going to change. No.
Right.
No.
Higgins, I tell you, I think Timmy might have been even in the game. And I don't even know where the game was, but I can remember Higgins comes out with this yellow suit.
Oh, Bob Higgins, yeah.
And he's trying, I guess at that time he was trying to lose some weight, and he starts to sweat and his pants turn a different color yellow. And I think, Timmy, you might have been in the game. We went over to him and they said, you have to put a towel over your pants that look like you peed your pants.
I wasn't in the game, but I will give you a Higgins story. The last year they were in the Big East, they had a very bad year in terms of officiating. He was not treated well by the Big East, and it certainly wasn't intentional. So his last game was in South Florida, and I had the game.
I was there.
Yeah, so
I was there.
He's calling me over while the teams are walking up and I'm warming up, and I ain't going over. And I won't go over. I keep shaking my head no. So finally, you got to shake hands with him before the game. And I go over and give him the dead fish and try to get away. And he says to me, how bad the officiating's been in the Big East this year? And I pay no attention. He said, do you know how bad? So I said, how bad, Bobby? He said, we're even happy to see you.
I was in that game.
How about as far as like some of the players that you've officiated? Do you get a lot of guys? Sonny and I go back and forth because I'm a big guy, he's a point guard, so there's a natural, yin and yang there. You get a lot of chatty point guards. We had a chatty point guard on our team, Gary McLean. He was very vocal with everybody. Did you get a lot of guys, and how do you deal with some of these guys? And who were some of the guys that you had conversations with like that got involved? You'd see a kid like a Gary McLean. He would come over and put his arm around the official and try to buddy up to you because they're looking for a call or whatever. Talk about.
You think? I thought he liked me.
He likes he likes everybody in a striped shirt. That's for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you. I mean, Timmy's been doing this a little longer than I have. I think over the 40 years that I've been doing it, I could probably count on one hand the players all over, not just in the Big East, on one hand that were not very good citizens. I mean, other than that, you go through games and they get pissed off, we get pissed off, but at the end of the night, everything works out. I mean, people are this kid. No, that's not true. It's absolutely not true.
I agree with that 100%. And you also have to remember that, as Eddie said, we might work these kids 25, 30, 40 times in their careers.
Right.
By the time it's over, it's like family. You were on first name basis with them. They were on first name with you.
Sure.
And it was always my feeling, and I would have never said this when I was refereeing, if one of those kids come over to me and told me privately what he thought, I had no problem with that. I didn't care what he said.
Right.
As long as I could say something back.
Exactly.
And they were great. I mean, you could have conversations. The kids were wonderful. They would, one of the things
really
I was really, I guess I don't have the right to be proud of, but I was really thought of, was these were 17, 18, 19-year-old kids who we expected to act like adults, and sometimes they acted a lot better than adults. They were great kids.
There's no question about it. No question about it. Like I said, on one hand, you could count the amount of kids that were not very well, not good citizens.
I got a specific reference for each of you guys that I want you to talk about for a second. Eddie, you first. There was an exhibition game at Northwood University.
The greatest game I ever did, probably other than my final
game
four.
you ever did. We were all there. The 85 guys were all there.
Sure.
And it was that game came about because Jay had a fundraiser golf outing, and Coach Mass announced to everybody that Jay was coming to Northwood to play them in their first ever game.
Yeah.
So here we go. So talk about the travel call at the end of the game for that, Ed.
Well, first of all, the sidelines was Bobby Orr,
Right.
Billy Cunningham,
Right.
Chuck Daly.
Yep.
Raph was there.
After he was there. Yep.
You're all you guys, and for some reason, Raleigh had taken. I had to give him the breakdown of how the game was going to be played. Timeouts. He had wasted every timeout before the first media timeout. He had no more timeouts left.
Right.
I mean, he was beating him like a drum, and I'm looking at him, I'm saying, Jay, are you serious? So it gets to the score of 99 with about 3 minutes to go.
Yep.
And Raph is yelling at me, Eddie, don't let them break 100. So there were times when Villanova was dribbling the ball up court, and I would call it 10 seconds. They didn't even have the ball inbounds for 3 seconds, and I would call 10 seconds, or I'd call a walk. I would call 3 seconds on them. I would call anything not for them to break. So finally, Jay, it clicked in Jay. I don't know why it clicked in Jay's head that Eddie's not going to let us score 100 points. I guess he got smart, but I'm Jay, what the hell are you doing? And but it was priceless. Coach Mass just sat there, and I'm sure he collected a big check, because the funny part about the checks was, when Raleigh got the bill for what he was going to pay the 3 officials to come down, it was like $10,000. He said, called up Jay. He says, "I'm sure you're taking care of the officials, aren't you?" But it was really wild. I mean, just to see those guys sitting on the sidelines.
Yeah, we went down there a lot, and
Sure.
Well, you heard from Brian and stuff. Some
Sure.
of the shows, but we would go down there, and it would be celebrity row, but there'd be less than 100 people in the place.
Sure. Yeah, exactly.
And then on the front row, it's like, it was a who's who. Sometimes Havlicek was there, like you said, Bobby Orr, and
it
was
Ray Floyd.
Yeah.
I went over one. My place in Florida is on 10 minutes from there. I was there one night. Ray Floyd, Havlicek, all the guys. I walked in and Rowley called me a son of a bitch, so I felt right at home. And then he asked me if I had cigars.
Yep, that sounds
cheap
about right.
bastard didn't pay for anything.
So now let me ask you, Tim. This one's for you. I read something as we did our due diligence to talk with you guys. You know, did you actually toss a cheerleader out of a game?
I did.
Tell me about that.
Yeah.
I was at,
I've never heard of that.
There's always a story behind. There's always a story behind the story.
Of course.
My girls, I have 3 girls, and the 2 oldest, who at that time were probably 11 and 13, didn't have school the next day, so I took them to St. Joe's. So we're in the game, and blah blah blah. I make a call, and a male cheerleader, gets in the megaphone and calls me names that you would not want you to be called. So I threw his ass out.
This is St. Joe's in Philly, Tim?
Yes.
So this
I
was
throw
St.
his ass
Joe's
out.
cheerleader.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, let me give you the funny part. I'm going off the court at halftime, and one of the Philly writers goes to me, Timmy, you can't leave the floor. And I'm stupid enough to ask him why. He says, they're short one for the pyramid. And then I come out to the car after the game, and my daughters won't talk to me because I threw the cheerleader out and embarrassed them.
Wow.
And then a week later, I'm sitting with my youngest, who was at like 6 years old. Valvano had a show on ESPN, and he said, and he goes into this clip and he says, I want to show you an official has all kinds of integrity and is not afraid to stand up to a challenge. Watch how he stands up and keeps his ground or whatever. And he shows me throwing out the kid. And my little daughter goes, Daddy, is that you? I said, no, it wasn't me. That's great.
Well, it was a St. Joe's cheerleader, so he definitely deserved it. I know that. No, you know about that rivalry, I'm sure, Tim, right?
1,000 of those games.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I got to ask you, do you have any good Coach B stories?
Oh, Boeheim?
Yeah.
No.
No,
I do. No. Let me tell you
That
something.
answers that, Sonny.
Let me tell you this.
There's one right there.
I only wish everybody was as good as Coach Boeheim.
That's a very good point.
Terrific guy, terrific coach. He was. I always enjoyed him. I always liked working his games.
I agree.
Funny wasn't part of his job.
No.
He's got a good sense of humor. He's a funny guy.
I wouldn't know.
That's right.
He
know
does.
what, guys, we had him on here, and he was like a different guy, right, Sonny?
Yeah.
I mean, he was actually, I would say, I would use the adjective bubbly. He was like, he was very good with us. I don't know, maybe because of Sonny. I don't know.
They did a roast of PJ Colissimo the way to raise money for Scranton Catholic. So they had a golf outing. And I'm on the practice team. They said, Timmy, you're on the tee. And I go up to the tee and I look over and there's Boeheim. And he looked at me and said, I don't know who's more pissed off, me or you. But we had a great day. He beat me by a shot, and he said there was no official that could ever beat him. That egotistical bastard.
He was
a good stick.
Let me tell you something. Joey Boeheim was a good guy.
Good stick.
I couldn't agree more. Yep.
He was a good guy.
I mean,
Good
once
for the
in a
game.
blue moon, you had, it comes down to a last play or something, and it didn't go his way, and you whine and mope and all that kind of stuff. But he really, I always enjoyed working his games.
I'll give you a funny story.
Go ahead.
There you go.
Big East Finals. You got to go over and shake hands with the coaches. We blew Boeheim off and went over and shook hands with his wife because we felt like she was the most important person in the league. She changed him from a miserable bastard to a good guy. And you can ask him about that. He was a good guy.
Great stuff. Now, would you care to share any stories about our good friend PJ?
Oh God, they could go on and on.
I think that's one right there. Oh God.
I'll give you PJ. Well, same thing. I bring my two daughters to a game. It's at the Meadowlands. I know everybody there. New to the game. There's a girls, I got a special treat for you. I'm going to let you go without your mom. You're going to be on your own. They were so excited. We get down there. I know everybody in the Meadowlands. I'll find somebody who watches the kids while I'm getting dressed. Well, I can't find anybody. And we're under the Seton Hall basket. So Anthony Avent, remember Anthony?
Sure.
He says, Timmy, what's the problem? I said, I got nobody to watch my daughters. I got to go to get dressed. He said, oh, I'll watch them. I said, okay, thanks. PJ calls the team in, and he's going over plays. And he says, and Anthony. And finally, he says, you got to be kidding me. He said, I'm watching Higgins' kids. Now we babysit the biggest officials' kids. We're in Puerto Rico. We come off the floor at halftime, and PJ says calls me a nasty name. So I tee him up. So he says to me, why'd you tee me up? I said, you can't call me that down here in front of all these people. He said, none of them speak English. I said, well, you dumb bastard, I do.
Yeah, right.
One of the good guys.
Well, yep.
One of the good guys.
He understood. He understood.
Yeah, he was one of the good guys. No question about it.
Yeah. Colorful.
Listen, there was a lot of them. I mean, we talked about them about
never stopped
stuff. I mean,
all the Italians. I'm telling you, Timmy, it was all the Italians. Nothing against the Irishmen. It was all the Italians. It was Carlissimo. It was Carnesecca, Massimino.
Yeah, well, that's why we were on the floor. They threw garbage at us.
So if you're talking to a young official, and I know Ed, I'm sure you've had this conversation with your son, and being all the experience that you've had and all the big games and all of the excitement of being in the Final Four and the finals and the Big East and all the stuff that we've talked about today, what's one thing that you would tell a guy who's coming up that is looking for advice from you guys? What would you say to somebody who would say he wants to be an official, and what would be the one or two things that you would say to somebody that you got to do this, make sure you do this?
I would tell them the most important thing is to be a year late than a year early, because once you step on your foot because you're not ready, it's very, very hard to make a comeback, because there's so many guys that they're at the same officiating level, and you don't want to have that little blip to get knocked back down, because it's extremely hard to come back up. So and that's a message that
that's a great
have
message.
pounded into my son is, listen, you're on the right path. You got a lot of good people that are helping you. Don't listen to what I have to say, because you're in a different era officiating wise, with all of this, monitor stuff and all that kind of stuff. But just when you blow the whistle, you have to be right. That's the most important thing. When you blow the whistle, if you don't blow the whistle, players play and coaches coach.
How about you, Tim?
Well, I first of all, I would echo what Eddie said. You better get the next play right, or else you're down the road. But the second thing I always try to say is, always be behind, don't be in front. Always confront the problem, don't be the problem. Mm-hmm. And don't escalate a problem. In our careers, I probably too many times escalated a problem, made a bigger problem on what may not have been a bigger problem. If you just stay behind and you take care of what you have to take care of, a lot of things will just go down the road and take care of themselves. I think the idea is you put as much discipline in as necessary, if not a little less than necessary, and hope that does it, rather than going in and overpowering and shooting somebody, and then you shoot yourself in the foot too. I just think, and I think that's one of the hard things for a young kid, is to just learn patience, right, and to just let things play out sometimes, rather than trying to be a hot ass and you're going to take care of the situation. These guys know how far they can go. And when they go too far, you just bring them back if you can. And you don't make a big deal of it. That would be my thought.
Right.
But to Eddie's point, you got to get the next play right.
Yeah, especially on that level, I would imagine, right? I mean,
You got to get the next play right. That's all there is to it.
Correct.
After all the laughs and everything we talked about, you better get plays right.
Yep.
Hey, listen, that's a great. Go ahead. Sonny.
Before speaking of getting it right, you guys noticed Chuck's background, right? He lives in a shrine. It's a Villanova shrine. You appreciate that, right? So
I've been in many.
So I had to bring up my little 2003 national champion. I just got a little. It's a little altar. It's not a complete cathedral. It's a little altar right here.
Cathedral.
Grotto.
Listen, there's a lot of ball busting that goes on between Sonny and I, guys, and it's
right
been
there. There it is.
It's been a lot of fun. He says to me, Tim, one day, he says, "Man, I need a candle to go with my your shrine. I mean, I need a candle so I can have that.
I gotta light a candle at Chuck's shrine.
I mean, at Villanova, we take things to another level, Tim. So
yeah, you
I sent him a religious candle with his picture on it. So he has his own candle.
Let it burn down.
There it is. So he's got his own. Saint Sonny candle. So
got too much time on his hands. What he's got.
Right. So. Listen, guys, thank you so much for your time today and joining us here on the Big East Rewind. We really, really appreciate it. And I know that I have an appreciation for what you guys do and what you've done on the court. I know how hard it is. I've tried to do it not nearly as successfully as you guys, but
boy, I would have liked to get in your face.
Well, you know what? It's funny because I was doing the games, Tim, on Long Island, and there are guys that are still coaching that coached against me. So that was a little bit of a different thing. It was kind of funny because I'd have conversations, from back when I was playing too. So
wow,
it was interesting. So, but thanks again, guys. We really appreciate you coming out.
Thank you.
I hope you had some fun, as much fun as Sonny and I
it.
Talking with you.
Good luck with the horses, Tim.
Yep.
You know what? I'm a loser.
I
played bad golf,
never
but I
say that about
horses,
Tim.
I'm a loser.
Hey, have fun.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
Eddie.
Thanks,
Good
guys.
to see you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
You've been listening to the Big East Rewind with Sonny Spera and Chuck Everson. The Big East Rewind has been produced and directed by Nick Chico Corbett and Daryl Gurney. You can check us out on YouTube if you go in and click on Big East Rewind. All of the episodes will come up that we've done. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit like. And if you want to contact Sonny or I, you can contact us on bigeastrewind@gmail.com. Thanks a lot for joining us and have a great night.
Peace out.